This is the Broodcast on Poets at War, Inkling-style Discord chat, last Friday of every month. And now, the Broodcast.
Recording and just remind people when they come in, and if anyone wants to review their stuff off the podcast, that's fine, but we'll figure it out from there.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, so what's been going on?
Not a giant amount. Been working.
Been busy?
A little bit. Not super busy. We've had some sickness and stuff, and so we've taken a lot more time off the last month than we generally do, but
Right,
yep,
right.
fairly busy.
Brendan, you are on a recorded line. How are you, sir?
Plague. Well, no, I don't have plague, obviously. I hear sickness and I think plague. No, we're okay. We're in the throes of moving.
Fun.
We move everything tomorrow.
Oh boy. But it's same neighborhood, right, or no?
It's like 2 blocks.
Okay.
It's so weird. But it's,
yeah, 2 blocks is just enough to where it's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One time Casey and I had to move out of our apartment and move right back in because they had special upgrades for us. So that was weird. I literally parked a truck, loaded it up, and then we like spent a night at my in-laws and then went back and moved it all back in.
We're going from 600 square foot to 900 square foot. So
nice.
Hey,
it could be really important when the third shows up.
33.33 repeating.
50%, actually.
yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's 50%. It's plus 50%.
If you go 600 divided by 2 is 300. That would be 50%. 600 plus 300 is 900.
Okay. I'm not mathing. I'm not mathing right now.
You don't have to math. It's okay. We're not here
Thank
for
you.
math.
I'm not good at it.
We're here for poetry and war.
Okay, I'm good at that.
Not necessarily in that order.
I'm fine with any order.
Yeah. That's how we do it.
So, Brendan, I know you're going to be sharing your thing that you wrote and put in the Discord. Do you want that on or off the podcast portion?
I do not. I have no strong opinion. It's 8 pages, single spaced with 12-point font. So I'll let you figure out how much I have to. I'm not sure how much I can actually fit. You know.
Well, sure. Like, how much do you want to read of it out loud?
Well, the way I see it, you can kind of divide it in 2, and I would like to do at least one of those sections. So
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm not saying anyone has to have a set amount of time, you know, just know that you're going to have more people during certain times than others. Let me go let the Facebook lurkers know we're live. Here we go. Let's see. Well, not live. I should not say that. We're on in the Broodcast in Discord whenever y'all would like to join. There, that's good enough. All right. So, Sickness in Alex's family and Brendan is there. I am brain fried for whatever reason. The children have been absolute little terrorists this week for seemingly no reason. There have been some allergies because of spring stuff happening, but I don't know that that's the only cause. They're acting like their whole world has been upheaved. I don't know if that's a word. But they are just. Yeah, it's weird because like when everything was going crazy, they were fine. And then right when things start to calm down, they get crazy. So.
Such is the way of things.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Ian's got foster kids being cranky. Otherwise, he'd join. Has he been on a broadcast yet, Ian Maffett?
I don't know.
Oops, sorry.
I'm not sure he has.
I was like, I think so. I don't think so. Well, one of us is wrong.
This is true. Yeah.
We have a 50% chance to get it right. Polls show 50-50.
I've known him maybe the longest of anyone in the brood, other than, you know, my brother Christopher. Yeah, probably. He and I met in, like, I want to say 05, but like his family used to attend the church that I attended, like, even before that, and I just didn't know him. But then we started attending the same church again, and Mom was like, "Oh yeah, you know their family." I'm like, "No, I don't." You know how that goes.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so he was, well, he wasn't worship leader at the time, but he was in the worship band, and now he's been full-time worship leader at like 2 or 3 different churches his whole adult life. That's been his career. So he's a cool dude. I really like him. Hello, what's up? I'll remind you again, you're on a recorded line.
I know. Why do you think I made that noise?
Oh, okay. Yes. To chase away the recording demons a la Tolkien. I gotcha.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
This is the way.
Good to hear from you guys. We're going to be, let's see, reading some stuff. I was just seeing who wanted their stuff read on the podcast versus after, if people had preference. Brendan said whatever. What about you guys, if you have stuff you're bringing? I know TK does, right?
Yeah, that is correct. I'm pulling it up.
Okay. Do you want it on the podcast or do you want it off the podcast?
Let's go with off podcast. This is
okay.
For my upcoming novel. I don't want to do any spoilers.
Fair enough. We'll save that toward the later hours unless you need to read it beforehand, and we'll figure it out. But yeah, okay. So, Brendan, you can... Well, we can get going here in a minute. I am still trying to decide between 2 different things to share. One is a video I could get rendering now for an unlisted YouTube video. The other, I was thinking I would just like play you guys the audio because it's a very unfinished video that is going to be a long intro / countdown for Poets at War Live. And it has a lot of I mainly just want to play the sound because that's what I've been focusing on first pass, and I got a lot of quotes and things in it, and it's gonna be about 7 minutes long, including the Minstrel Boy in it, which is gonna be the theme song leading into it. But basically, it's just like a 7-minute countdown to the show begins kind of a thing. So it's long. It's very long. It's meant to be very long, just so you have something interesting to listen to while you're waiting, and it's not just nothing, right? It's not just, here's a countdown. So,
yeah.
Anyway, but either one of those, whatever you guys want to hear. The other one, Stonecutter, so far. Like the whole 4 minutes of the 6 that are done. So, whichever you guys are most interested in, my Stonecutter animated thing or this Poets at War, just the sound intro thing. So, a lot of from Brendan over there.
I grunt. It is my method of affirming that I hear what you say and am tracking.
Gotcha.
I agree with this.
Does anyone have a preference on what they'd like to see / hear?
I mean, I kind of... Nope, go on.
Alex?
Frack, I forgot what I was going to say.
I think that the Poets of War Live thing would be kind of cool to hear.
Cool.
I'm really excited for it.
Cool.
I think it'll be great.
Cool. I will play that when the time comes. I may go ahead and render that as an MP3 for people to listen to while we're doing this. That way you can actually hear a fair quality version of it. But all right.
Good idea.
Anyway, so what do we want to begin with some other stuff, or do we want to just jump into Brendan's thing? What do you guys think?
Just get right to Brendan's thing.
Cool.
Yeah, okay.
You have the floor, sir.
So this is sort of a thing. I say it's a story. That implies that I have more of it planned. It's less of a plan and more like guidelines. Wait, no, that's not how it goes. Anyway, the point is that this is taking place in a universe that I'm sort of in the process of creating, mostly for a different project. But I said, well, I have this world. I might as well, write other stuff in it as I am inspired. And so this is taking place from the perspective of what's known as or from a character who is from what's known as the Iconian Empire, which is very pacifistic for an empire. It's a little weird. Anyway, that's not important. I ended up writing 10 pages, and it was really difficult for me to actually finish. Okay, I lied. 8 pages.
Shut the front door.
And I don't think it would be wise for me to read all 8 pages. So the question is, do you want an introduction to the character, or do you want to see what the character actually does?
I think an intro to the character would probably be apropos, and then we can save the rest for another time, and you won't feel like you have to do more unless you want to.
Sure. Okay, we can do that.
You guys agree?
I agree.
All right. Sure. Let us begin. Excuse me. So I did share in the Discord. If you want to read for yourself, it is under General. It is Silver's story. That is the working title because I'm bad at titles, just like names. Anyway, so chapter 1. Fiolin sat quietly in front of a brazier, the scent of incense slowly wafting over him. He breathed deeply, taking in the smell. Soon he wouldn't be able to smell this again, not for a while at least. The pungent odor seemed to stick to the inside of his mouth. His eyes watered from the intensity of the scent. He suspected it would be on his clothes for the rest of the day, but that would actually help. It was always good to have multiple fail-safes. Fiolin heard the footsteps approaching, softer steps, those of a new recruit, but one that had seen battles. He heard the flap of his tent get pushed aside, and felt a pause as, whoever it was, observed him from the entrance of the tent. "Sir," the young man's voice was direct and clear, but betrayed hints of caution, or perhaps uncertainty. "It's time?" Fiolin's question was one of politeness. He knew the answer. The other man knew that he knew too. Still, it did its job, and the man seemed to relax a little. "Yes, sir, it's time." Fiolin stood and turned, and looked upon the young man before him. He was no older than Fiolin, appearing to be only 20 years, and clad in standard gambeson chain and light breastplate of the infantry unit. Upon seeing Fiolin properly, he took a step back in surprise. Fiolin was used to this, though. His eyes being almost radiant silver, and the streak of silver in his hair were always a surprise to people at the first time. He didn't care, though. Most people got over it quickly. True to form, the young man recovered, and immediately was aware of what he had done. "Apologies, sir." He bowed quickly. Fiolin hurriedly waved his hands. No need to apologize." He smiled at the soldier. "First time seeing a Farseer?" The young man hesitated. "First time seeing one when they weren't working, sir," he admitted. Fiolin nodded and put up his hood. "It's normal. Lead the way." Exiting the tent, the soldier led him through the camp. As they walked, various personnel quickly moved out of the way to let them through. Fiolin was actually aware that the soldiers were watching him, despite not seeing them with his hood up. Farseers were an important asset to the Iconian Empire, and were often guarded heavily, with their location and identity kept secret. All this attention made him uncomfortable. He didn't enjoy being treated like some mythical creature. He had a gift. He just wanted to use it to help people. He wasn't special. Except he was. The two arrived at the outskirts of the camp, where the rest of the soldiers' platoon seemed to be waiting. They fell in formation around them, and together they marched up the hill. Fiolin felt the breeze and tasted the salt in the air of the sea. It was going to be a cold and gray day. They reached the top of the hill, where more heavily armored soldiers had set up a small camp. A man in a bright cloak stood on the cliff face, looking out over the sea. With him stood another man in a darker green cloak, and they seemed to be deep in conversation. The group approached unhindered, and the young man, who was leading the group, snapped into a salute. "Lord Commander, the Farseer, at your request." The tall and brightly cloaked man turned. "Thank you, Captain. You will assist in guarding the Farseer. Tactician Egrath will give you details." With that, the young man, who was apparently the captain, saluted again, and he and his men left Fiolin and the commander alone. Fiolin made a point to look at the boots of the commander. Lord Commander Navarre was as infamous for his ruthlessness as he was famous for his tactical brilliance. Those of noble houses frequently ended up leading armies. However, often they needed training in tactics, strategy, and other arts of war. Commander Navarre, however, excelled far beyond any expectation, and as a result, many rumors about him had begun to circulate, most of which were spoken with fear. After a moment of silence, the Lord Commander spoke. "You go by Silver, correct?" A common social tactic. Ask a question you already know to give the other permission to speak. Fiolin used it not 5 minutes ago on the captain. "Yes, my lord." Fiolin added a slight bow to the phrase, allowing it to emphasize the title. The feet of the commander moved toward Fiolin, stopping when he was right in front of him. "Look at me, Silver." Fiolin obliged to look up into the face of the commander. He was a hardened man with a salt and pepper beard trimmed short. His eyes were firm and unflinching, and he did not look away upon seeing Fiolin's radiant silver eyes. He sniffed. "I was too late, it seems. You have done your little ritual." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal object on a chain. It was a sensor. "I had this brought here to provide you with a tether, should you need it." That sentence startled Fiolin. Not many people knew Farseer terminology. Fewer still of noble descent. Oftentimes, Farseers were strange people who got the job done. No one questioned what they did or why, so long as it worked. Commander Navarre had done his research. "That's kind of you, my lord." Fiolin barely managed to get the sentence out without stammering. "I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting—" He trailed off, realizing that the sentence would not end well. The commander gave a little smile. Not a harsh, wolfish smile, but more amused, like someone watching a child stumble through a completely simple task. "Be at peace, Farseer. I take no offense to your action." He held out the sensor to Fiolin. "Should you wish, you may use this. I meant only to assist those in my care." Fiolin hesitated, but then held out his hand under the commander, allowing him to place it in his hand. It was a small thing, but allowing the commander that agency to give was important to Fiolin. The sensor was clean, unused by anyone. The only thing Fiolin sensed on it was the crafter's imprint, and that wouldn't interfere with his work. "I thank you, my lord." Fiolin bowed again. "I will gladly use this, then." Oh, there was no then there. The commander nodded. "To business, then." Leading Fiolin to a basic table, on it was a map of Muster Island. The island was divided into 4 sections. The southern peninsula, the eastern and western sections all stemmed off of a central section. The eastern and western segments had a few marks in them, and the southern peninsula had a few marks and a line. Fiolin inferred that the marks were camps, and the line was a supply route. Tactician Egareth has sent scouts out to unclaimed regions. We know there are Confederate forces in the east and Haldarian to the west, but beyond that we know very little. Commander Navarre grabbed a charcoal stick and began to draw on the map. "We are hesitant to push in, since we do not want to expose ourselves to an attack on 2 fronts. However, we know that a star gem landed on the island, and each group is racing to find it." Fiolin felt a shiver go down his spine, despite his cloak keeping him warm. Star gems were extremely powerful and extremely rare, named so because of their appearance during the 3rd starfall. These gems housed immense magical potential, and Fiolin was never near one himself, but he heard how they had been used to devastating effect by the Empire and the Confederacy alike. He understood now why he was called. "You will be primarily performing 3 tasks." The commander turned to face Fiolin fully. "Firstly, locate and confirm that our scouts are still alive. There should be 3 patrols. When you contact them, say, 'The wolves are hungry.' They will know that you are with us and report what they have found. The commanders' names are Skargrim, Dios, and Morloth. Secondly, scout deep into the enemy territory as you can. Provide information about the number of troops and their location. Finally, see if you can locate the star gem. While there should be some kind of crater or point of impact, we have found that life grows abundantly near them, so any vantage point we have makes it difficult to find, especially in forested areas." Fiolin hadn't moved. He was still studying the map. The Empire had taken the whole peninsula, but had not pushed far beyond that. On top of that, numerous arrows pointed from the Haldarian and Confederate sides of the island through the water to the peninsula. To Fiolin, it seemed like the commander had a great deal on his mind. "Is there an issue, Farseer?" The commander's question felt like a point-blank crossbow leveled at his head. Fiolin pushed down his nerves. No, sir. He turned to face the commander indirectly and bowed. I was just reading your notes on the map. He didn't say how he felt about the whole thing. Lord Commander Navarre looked down at the Farseer. He sighed. You are no soldier, son, he said quietly, almost gently. At this, Fionn looked up at him at his own volition. You were sent as a chosen representative, but I can tell that you are worried about what you will do. Fionn began to panic. My lord, I want to help. I am not doubting your motives, Silver. Navarre cut him off, and Fionn shut his mouth, inwardly cursing at his lack of confidence. I'm telling you that you needn't fear battlefield. We will do the hard, bloody work. You will assist us with the tools that only you possess. Is that fair? Fionn nodded, and the commander gave him a soft smile. There's a good lad. How soon can you be ready? Just a minute. Fionn paused and lifted the sensor, Though it'd be help if someone lit this for me. I'll say that's a breaking point. It's about halfway through. But that's your introduction to Fionn before he actually starts working.
Nice. You have a very strong sense of it's not so much space and place to me as it is the world feels very clearly the hierarchies are very intuitive to the reader. You're launching them immediately into a ton of exposition, but it feels like people who are like, we're really focused on what we're doing, you just have to keep up. And I like the breakneck feeling of the exposition. I think it feels militaristic.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
The thing that I'm most afraid of, or the thing that I was most afraid of when I was trying to put this down, was exposition dumping.
Mm-hmm.
I think you all know, I've mentioned I'm a world builder at heart. That's what I love doing. I have a map of this place. I have a sort of like hierarchies in the different societies. I have why each society acts the way it does.
Right.
Excuse me. I have all of this stuff. But if I just throw that at you, I feel like that would the reader would fall asleep. So I was trying very hard not to say more than was absolutely necessary, and then just move on.
Yep. That is a hard road to haul when it comes to sharing as much of your loved world building as possible, and I think you definitely shared that. The only thing that I would say could be a little bit more the colors of the world and the sounds of the world could be more visceral to me. There's not a ton of that yet, but there's not a lot of space for it either, so it would be a sparing thing regardless. But on a second pass, those would be the things that I would focus on, is just like tone, color, feel of the places that the clothing, the way that people look, that sort of a thing, and then get into the way things sound. There was a little bit of that in the tone of voice, but and a little bit with the commander, I believe it was. I could tell was a little more gruff kind of a thing, but yeah, that's just kind of the only things I was wanting more of as I was listening. So what do you guys think?
Probably the highest compliment that I can give a fantasy work is that it reminded me very much of Lloyd Alexander. And this had that same impression about it. It seems like it's very real to you, and I think that you've done a very good job of making it real to your readers, or listeners in our case.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you did too much into info dumping. I mean, I was engaged, and I normally don't go for info dumping. I sort of do the exact opposite. I mean, Sarah Levesque, my editor, has to pry the information out of my tight fist.
I liked the way that you characterized the three characters that we actually got to see. The Farseer, the captain, and the commander. I thought that all three were characterized very well.
Yeah,
I'm glad. I find it interesting because You said that you need more sound and more color. That is something I am going to need to work on because, and this is unfortunately like we're just before Violin Silver, however you want to call him, the Farseer, starts doing his work. Part of his work involves blocking out all of his senses. And so the fact that you say you want more of that, I was focusing on a lot of like smell and like trying to get like that, but I somehow left out color and sound.
Yeah.
So thanks. I will try to implement that particularly.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're going into more of his point of view, that can make it even more almost like a reverse Wizard of Oz, where you're going from the color to the black and white. You know, when he's really focused on what he's doing, you can reflect that in your writing for sure. All right, Scout 107, welcome to the Broodcast. I think you've been on before, right?
Yes,
It's Aaron. That's right.
How far are we into it?
We just finished listening to Brendan. Brendan, the Chaotic Son, was giving his about 4 pages worth of a work that he's working on, and we were just giving feedback on that. I think Ian, do you have a anything you're going to be reading yet, or no?
If we have time.
Do you want it on the podcast or off the podcast?
Oh, sure, we'll put it on the podcast.
Okay, sweet. Well, you can go next if you'd like. I think you and Aaron, did you bring something?
Did I bring something
that you wanted to share?
I didn't know there was anything going on.
Yeah, well, we were going to be. We decided on the last Broodcast we were going to start doing Inkling readings, and you can be here for just give opinions and thoughts and whatever else. But that's kind of what we're doing right now, is sharing some works of ours, whatever they may be. It doesn't have to be stories, and just giving feedback, sort of Inkling style. So
it's one of these you're allowed to listen if you want to. You don't have to share, but if you do want to share, you're invited.
Yeah, and you can always give your opinions. You know, I guess, Ian, you have the floor for now, unless, Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to jump in with before we get started on that, or no?
Not yet.
Okay, all right.
Not yet.
All right, well, Ian, you can, you have the floor, sir.
All right, so I've been working on this series of short stories for my blog that it focuses on the ancestor of my main character in my werewolf stories, who was a Visigoth, or an Ostrogoth, I should say, named Vidar Tormundsson. And in the beginning of the story, he finds out his village has been massacred by the Huns, and his entire family is dead except for his wife. And so he goes on a mission of revenge. He sells his soul to a witch in order to get revenge, and she makes him a werewolf. So in my lore, the werewolf curse is passed down through the father's line. So it passes from Vidar Tormundsson to Vidar's son Ulrich to Ulrich's entire family, which Walter Ulrich, my main character, is a descendant. So I'm on part 4 right now. Vidar has already sold his soul to the witch, and the witch asks him to go and kill a local Christian priest who's sharing the gospel. Vidar doesn't want to do that because the priest is unarmed. He doesn't kill unarmed men. But he's forced to do that in wolf form, and now we're picking up just as he's waking up from being a werewolf. Cold raindrops roused Vidar from his slumber. He arose from the leaf litter which had been his bed the night before. He was hungry, famished even. His wounds hurt. How had he gotten such wounds? His memories from when he had taken the wolf shape were vague and hazy, as one recalls a dream. It came flooding back. the priest, the battle with Torbjorn, his escape into the wild. He looked about him. Where was he? Where was the village? He needed to get his bearings right in order to discover the fate of Torbjorn. Torbjorn, by the way, is Vidar's cousin, his last living relative. Hearing a slight rustle in the bushes behind him, Vidar whirled around. Agnar, the werewolf, servant of the witch, stood before him, eyeing him with a blank expression. "You," said Vidar. "Well done, Vidar," said Agnar. "The black god of the mountain is pleased." "Why?" asked Vidar. "I did not slay the priest as I was bade." "Nay, but you spared not your own kinsman when the need arose," replied Agnar. "Then Torbjorn is dead, my lord." Vidar nearly collapsed. So filled was he with rage and grief that he could contain it no longer. His wails of anguish echoed through the forest. When Vidar had finally exhausted himself, he looked up into the face of Agnar, rage still burning in his heart. "What was it all for?" he said hoarsely. "The gods require sacrifice," replied Agnar. "The priest was a threat to the old ways. He had to die to keep our ways alive. He will still die, but not by your hand." "Then whose hand?" asked Vidar. "That is not your concern," replied Agnar. "We must return to the village before suspicion is aroused." "Would it be too much to ask for a garment of some sort?" he inquired. "It would be unfitting for me to return to the village thus unclothed." Agnar undid the brooch of his cloak and tossed the garment to Vidar. "Thank you," he said, wrapping the cloak about his muscular body. The two men made their way back down to Vidar's hut at the edge of the village. "Wait out here by the stand of trees," said Agnar. "I shall fetch you some clothes." Agnar entered the dwelling and returned with a tunic and breeches, which Vidar put on quickly. He burst into the hut, where he found the lifeless body of Torbjorn lying on a couch. His wife, Astrith, sat on the floor weeping. Gunhild, the wolf woman, holding her slender white hand. "Vidar," said Astrith, rising from the floor with difficulty. She threw her arms about her husband as the two wept together. "I feared you had died," she said. "I am here, my love," said Vidar. "Now quickly we must prepare to flee." Astrith nodded solemnly and set about packing while Vidar went outside to begin building the wooden pyre to burn the body of his kinsman, with Agnar following behind. As they labored, a familiar voice greeted Vidar's ears, a voice which he had no desire to hear. He turned to see Quirinius approaching from the gravel road. "You have my deepest sympathies," said the Roman. "Thank you, my lord," said Vidar. "You look as though you've seen better days yourself," remarked Quirinius. "Aye," replied Vidar. "The wolf fell upon me while I was hunting for game early this morning." Vidar, like all men of his race, despised falsehood, but since becoming a werewolf, he was forced to become rather good at it. "You're lucky you survived," said the centurion. "Were you able to kill it?" "Nay," replied Vidar. "I wounded him severely, but he managed to get away. I would have given chase, but my wounds were severe, and I needed to treat them before infection set in." "That's understandable," said Quirinius. "I shall track it down later and bring its hide back," said the Goth. "I should expect so. I will leave you to your funeral arrangements. I suspect you will want a bit of privacy. Farewell." With that final salutation, the centurion walked off to attend to other matters, while Vidar and Agnar bore the body of Torbjorn out of the hut and laid it on the pyre. Agnar and Astrith joined them, bearing jars of oil and mead. After the women had anointed the body with the liquids, Vidar set the pyre alight. The four then watched the fire burn down to ashes, chanting a funeral song for the slain. Night fell. A night as black as the eternal darkness before the first dawn. Vidar and Agnar loaded up the horses with their meager possessions as quickly and as quietly as they could. Even in human form, they needed little light to see by. "Vidar," said a quiet voice barely above a whisper. The Goth whirled about, knife drawn. In the dim torchlight he made out the features of Valentinus the priest. "What do you want, priest?" snapped Vidar. "I'm sorry about what happened to Torbjorn," said the priest. Vidar was somewhat impressed. Here was this priest, small in stature and build, likely unarmed, injured, approaching a hardened Gothic warrior alone in the dead of night. Vidar contemplated killing him. After all, he knew that what Torbjorn was, and likely knew what Vidar was. "Vidar, put that knife away!" exclaimed Astrith, placing her hand upon his arm. "He knows," growled the Goth. "Yes, I do know, and I want to help you," said Valentinus. "Why?" asked Vidar. "Because you are not well," said the priest. "The Lord Jesus came to heal the sick." "He could not even save himself," retorted Vidar. "He sacrificed himself so that you would not have to be a slave to this devil," said Valentinus. "He can release you from this. Let me help you, Vidar." "I am beyond help," said Vidar, sheathing his blade. "I thank you for keeping my secret safe." "You are welcome," replied Valentinus. The priest then let out a pained sigh and clutched his chest, fell to the ground. Gunhild stood behind him, bleeding dagger in her hand. Should say bloody dagger to fix that. "Why did you do that?" hissed Vidar. "He knew," replied... Should say Gunhild, not Astrith. I'm editing this as we go along. "We could not let him live." "He protected us," replied Astrith angrily. "We could not take that chance," said Gunhild. "He was unarmed," growled Vidar. "There's no honor in it." "It was him or us," retorted Gunhild. Vidar scowled. There was no taking it back. He said a quiet prayer that Valentinus' god would accept his sacrifice, and lifted Astrith onto Torbjorn's horse. The two then rode away into the darkness, Gunhild and Agnar following behind. And now some time passes. An anguished cry rent through the air. I'm not done.
Oh, you good? You good? I thought you were saying, and now time passes, like referencing meta wise what was going on currently while you were waiting for feedback. But go ahead.
An anguished cry rent through the air. Astrith's hand squeezed Vidar's like a blacksmith vice. Gunhild stood nearby, assisting the birth. "I am here, my love," said Vidar. "Don't know if I can bear it any longer," she cried. Gunhild laid a cloth on Astrith's head. "It won't be long now," she said. And surely it was not. That very hour the child, a son, was born. Vidar's joy was mixed with grief as he remembered that Torbjorn would never see this new life. As he held the lad in his brawny arms, he began to weep. "What will we call him?" asked Astrith. Vidar took a moment to think. He had been contemplating names for a long time. Names were very important to Goths. Names have power. Names are magic. If you name something, you speak over it a form of enchantment. "Ulrich," said Vidar, "the Wolf King." "Strong name," replied Gunhild. "Hopefully he will grow into it." "In time he will," said Vidar. And that's the end.
Alrighty. Yep. So this is related to your Ulrich stuff, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. Ulrich, for those of the people who don't know, you want to give them context for that as well?
So Ulrich is Walter Ulrich is a hunter of monsters. He himself is a werewolf, but he's trying to overcome that. The werewolf curse is sort of a metaphor for original sin. And Walter is trying to get free from that through various spiritual disciplines, while also killing monsters.
And he's in modern day as a kind of a detective, right?
Yeah. He's a paranormal private detective in this little town in West Virginia.
I really wanted to make an Ulrich von Liechtenstein from Knight's Tale joke, but I'm not going to.
Yeah, so this is his ancestor, this goth. Vignar, is it, right? Vidar. Yeah, okay. All right. So what do you guys got?
Lycanthropy is hereditary then, as well as inflicted curse, or curse that can be inflicted, I take it.
Yeah, it's passed on through the father. I actually talked with a exorcist from the Catholic Church when I was writing this stuff and establishing this lore. And that's kind of how you have hereditary demons that torment a particular family, and that's how that works. It's passed down through the father.
Because of his authority over the family.
Is it that, or because of original sin being passed through father's blood?
Chicken or the egg?
I mean, the original sin being passed through the father's blood is caused by the father's authority over the family in some sense. I mean, the father gains. That's what.
You're cutting in and out a lot, Aaron.
I mean, I don't know if it's your end or just me speaking very stop and start. Yeah, I am speaking very stop and start.
Yeah, it's sounding robotic. It could be that the connection you have is not great. It could also be there's a setting that allows you to turn on noise reduction and on and off. And sometimes if you're speaking quietly, it can trip it to where it's only hearing every other word kind of a thing. I don't know. But anyway, let's see.
Let me just from a writing standpoint, I liked a lot of it. There were a couple of points where, like 1 or 2 points where I was thinking maybe a different word choice. So when the guy gives him the cloak and you say, "Thank you," he says. But the line before that, he said something along the lines of, "It would be unbecoming of me to enter in this state," or something like that. Which, I mean, I guess "thank you" works, but I'm wondering maybe "my thanks" instead, or whatever. Just a level of it's like, I like what you're saying, I like what he says. I just there are 1 or 2 points, like once or twice throughout the entire thing, where I'm like, maybe tweak the word choice a little bit. But overall, like, I really like the sin. I like that you didn't make the priest just like he was kind of just a dude, but he also was like he did earn respect before he got murked. That was kind of nice. You know, like I like a lot of it. It's just again, like the only writing thing I can think of that kind of makes me go is word choice, and that's not even like a big thing comparatively speaking,
because that can be massaged. Yeah, and it's not a lot either. A lot of his stuff. See, here's the thing that I'm wondering about is with word choice. Your Ulrich stuff is so grungy, simple-minded, simple-worded kind of, you know, it's the barbarian language thing, which you do really well. And Ulrich is this, you know, just he's kind of your Hugh Jackman Wolverine kind of a person, and so he's like, "Yeah, bub, get out of my face." I definitely felt that with Vidar, and it was one of these things where I'm like, but it's third person, right? Third person perspective. And so I'm like, how far, if it's going to be a spinoff of Ulrich, how far can you deviate from the sort of barbarian jock language you've already got established with Ulrich? You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like, I'm torn. I really am. I'm torn on how to approach that. I agree with Brendan, but I'm also kind of like, how I've, read I've done a bunch of several Ulrich stories with, the audiobook thing. And I'm kind of like, it can't be that different, right? I don't know. Is this something totally different that just so happens to be in the same world? Or is this like a part of the same stuff that you're putting out?
I don't know exactly how to say that, because it does inform the rest of my Ulrich stuff. Here's the thing. I just had this idea while I was, I don't know, scrolling Twitter. As like, what if I did a sword and sorcery story in the Ulrich universe? And I thought, wouldn't that be great? And I just kept coming up with ideas for it. And I wrote them down because I figured it would go good in my blog.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and this is not a discussion for here exactly, but one thing that like I hang around various fantasy writers, and one of the things they do is like, how do you write characters when you literally aren't speaking the same language, or not even just not speaking the same language, but you're not like, it's a fantasy world, right? There's going to be all kinds of different rules. There's going to be all kinds of different sort of nonsense. And one solution is, rather than having them curse in a different language, just curse in English, and it gets the point across. Because if you were translating, that's how you would translate it, right? You would translate it swear for swear, grammar for grammar, whatever. So if somebody was speaking a version of the old language, then you would use that. The problem is, you are in, like, we're talking Rome here, right? So we're talking pre-500 AD at bare minimum. So if you were to apply that, people would talk like, people wouldn't be speaking old language because for them, it's modern. This is modern Gothic that they're speaking. So then you have to question, all right, well, who are these guys? Are these like the leaders of a clan? So are they expected to speak more formally? Are they expected to have a certain elegance in poetry? Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling at this point, but it's just like, yeah, that's the only weird thing. I'm when you said barbarian like language, I'm like, but they don't think of themselves as barbarians, is the thing.
Yeah.
Well, there's a discussion in the previous chapter where Torbjorn or Vidar is sort of talking inside his own head and saying, well, which one of us is really the barbarians here? Because we may slaughter our enemies and whatnot, but you take your enemies and have them ripped apart by animals in the Colosseum.
Oh, yeah, talking about Rome, yeah.
And he's like, you're the guys who are lazy and opulent and drinking wine all day, and you couldn't last a minute where I come from. So which one of us are really the barbarians here? And so there's that discussion between high civilization and barely civilized.
Right. Yeah, like I said, has anyone else seen Angel, the TV show Angel?
I have not.
The Buffy spinoff?
Yeah, the Buffy spinoff. Has anyone else seen that besides me here?
I've been meaning to watch it because you told me it was good.
It is definitely your kind of thing.
I am uncultured swine.
I'm sorry?
I am uncultured swine.
Okay, well, let me just say that they do sort of. Okay, so Angel himself, the character, is. Has anyone seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer other than me here?
I have not.
Boy, okay, we're really okay. This is okay. Let me just say this much.
Familiar with who and what Angel is.
Okay, so yeah, I was going to get to that. So Joss Whedon's magnum opus is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Angel is the spinoff. Basically, vampires there are always evil because they are demons, because they're from they're these demons from the dawn of time, and it's this fantasy situation where essentially there's this one girl in all the world who's raised every generation to fight the vampires and the demons and the monsters and everything else. Well, Angel is a vampire, but he actually, after hundreds of years of killing and killing and killing, got cursed by a gypsy to have his soul, to have a soul, I should say, placed back inside his person. The demon does not count as a soul. Okay, so the soul is like essentially in this world like a conscience. It's remorse. It's the idea that there could be something good or better, which a vampire does not have, and that's why he can kill indiscriminately. So now he not only has that, but he remembers every single victim individually and is just crushed by guilt. And so he basically is on a mission to essentially atone for his sins and save the world as best he can, and blah blah blah. So he's this like the one good vampire in all the world. And that slowly changes, and there's like one or two others, but that's not here or there. Point being that there's a lot of flashbacks in the TV series Angel to the times when he was, Mr. Killer Vampire guy, and even before that when he was a little Irish dude named Liam. And it goes into his past, and there's even whole flashback episodes and stuff where they do this kind of thing, and they completely change from an urban fantasy back into like a period piece fantasy. And I think that's a very high mark for how they do it, because they're able to keep a modern sense of tone while being period accurate, which is not easy. I got a sense from this sort of like we're going from, and this is a good thing, I think, for the most part, we're going from like an X-Men style thing with which we had with Ulrich, Logan, et cetera, to like Pirates of the Caribbean, which is not a huge jump in style and tone. There's a little bit more humor in one versus another, blah blah blah, but with like, okay, sure, whatever. I'm saying if you go so far into trying to be historical period accurate, although you should be, you don't want to sacrifice the Ulrich tone unless this is just a completely different thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does.
Okay. What do you think, Brendan? Am I crazy? Am I thinking too much on staying consistent across the two things?
I mean, I feel like there's no right or wrong.
Yeah.
Like you can do it either way. Just make sure you do it well.
And package it accordingly. That's the other thing. Just like,
yeah, well, yeah. That's the problem. The problem with any creative endeavor is that there are so many. Try to isolate one moving part at the expense of the others, it's all going to fall apart anyway.
Right.
So you have to package it appropriately, but you can do it either way. You can either have everything be consistent throughout all the stories and just have everybody speak this, well, not the same, but speak
similar.
Yeah. Have similar language across it. I'm actually going to use an example of how this of something as like the counterexample and how I don't think it worked. There's a author by the name of Glenn Cook. He wrote a series of books called The Black Company. And in the first book, it was told purely from the perspective of one character. It wasn't first person, but it was told from that character's perspective. Mm-hmm. In the second book, he was bouncing back and forth between two characters. One of them was the character from the first one, but the other one was one that... And I'm like, you know what? Okay, that works. It's two characters, but it's consistent. But then the third book rolled around, and while you still got primary main character's perspective, it would also randomly teleport you to the perspective of some random farmer somewhere. And I guess the point was to try to make the world like to try to build out the world and like, oh, you can see how these actions are affecting people outside of just this. But it just flopped. So whatever you do, if you're going to be consistent, be consistent. I guess is what I'm saying. If you're trying to build a continuity, you have to be consistent.
Right. So yeah, I guess just think about that. Do what, Ian? Or was that Aaron? That's Aaron. He's trying to come through. Is anyone else hearing him okay?
Not at all.
No, I'm not.
I'm only hearing like every fourth syllable.
Well, he said his internet was slow, so
yeah,
I'm assuming he's just having errors on his side.
All right. Now can you hear me?
Yes,
Hey!
actually.
No.
Yeah.
I can hear you. Oh, now it's doing it again.
Really?
Put in the subtitles, sounds of frustration.
Yes.
Yeah, sounds of frustration.
Frustrated robot noises.
Maybe you're hearing. One second.
If you want to type it, you can do that. Okay, he just left. He may come back. Anyway. Yeah. So if he comes back around, we'll see if we can. There he is. Okay. Do you have what you want to say? Try again.
All right. I'm trying again.
Sounding good so far?
Trying again. Okay. I mean, there was a major storm in my area, so maybe some towers got knocked down. Usually, phone signal is amazing and internet's amazing here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, were you talking about Harry Potter?
Talking about what?
Whenever you were talking about that book that went to the random farmer.
Brendan, I was talking. Okay, yeah.
It helps if I'm unmuted. Yeah. Oh, the book is packed. Shoot. Hang on. I'll see if I can find the exact book. But company series. I can't spell. Brian Cook. Black Company. It was. Let's see. Oh, this is not helpful. Thank you, Universe, for just deciding to slap me in the face. The White Rose. The book is called The White Rose. It's in the Books of the North series.
Is it fantasy?
It is fantasy, yes.
Okay. I was talking about an alternate history author. His entire thing is, having a whole bunch of perspectives, because his book's not so much about a plot as exploring an alternate history scenario, exploring the world. And some of his best books, are like that. I've only been able to read one of his books called The Guns of the South, which is a Civil War alternate history scenario where some South African militants from the apartheid era traveled back in time and gave AK-47s to the Confederate Army.
Oh, goodness.
Whoa.
Yes. And, of course, the Confederates quickly won the Civil War after that.
That's very confusing.
It was a very fun... yeah. It was a very fun book. And, there was perspective of having Robert E. Lee, I'm pretty sure. There was also this one random this person from a random state, Carolina, I don't know. That's the best guess because there's two states there. So, and I mean, I don't remember the other perspective, but it's something like that. The stories are completely disconnected. but he just likes to. But the entire point is exploring this scenario, and it's not to have a particular plot.
Right.
So I do think it kind of like not all stories are plot focused to where you want perspectives to be connected all the time.
Right.
But in general.
Yeah, and I wasn't talking so much about
people
perspective as tone, but yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, Alex, did you have anything on Ian's writing?
Not really. I enjoyed it. It was very interesting. It's a type of fiction that I haven't really explored a lot before. But
Cool.
I don't have I have not developed my terminology for critique and understanding.
That's okay.
So I don't have any specifics.
Well, just saying you liked it is nice, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah.
Liking things is nice.
Exactly. All right. Well, yeah, go ahead, Ian.
I hear what you're saying. I'll have to think about it for future Vidar stories, because I like this character enough that he's going to come back at some point, and I'll do some future stories. I guess I don't know how to make it of that sort of gritty sound that you guys seem to like, while also keeping it consistently medieval-ish, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Because he says, if you look at Germanic languages, that's how they talk. It's like very formal King James English time,
right?
Because it hasn't changed, and it's always been like that. And I want to keep that consistent. At the same time, you guys like that, what did you call it, jock barbarian tone?
Well, right, and I wasn't saying necessarily change any of that. You can keep the King James thing, keep the Germanic thing. I'm saying that's kind of what you were doing, whereas Brendan was saying, from what I was hearing, it didn't feel like necessarily period accurate or this. That's kind of what I got from Brendan.
Well, no, I was just saying that there was some, what I felt was an inconsistency in the word choice of the spoken individuals.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I chalked that up to Germanicness of the situation and like keeping some of the, you don't want to go too flowery, even with flowery characters, because you're dealing with a world where we're used to Walter Ulrich and his Louisiana priest buddy, going around solving mysteries. So like that, there's a point where when you're jumping periods in a series where you're so into the period that it doesn't feel like the same world anymore. And that can be a good thing, and it can also take you out of a story, and it's a fine balance. And that's why I brought up Angel. So I think they do that very well. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Does anyone want to hear my long intro now, or do we want to do something else before that, or what do we want to do?
Intro.
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it has been an hour.
Yes, it has, and it'll be time to wrap the recording in a few. I'd love to get this on the recording, even though it's going to be straight through my microphone from speakers.
All right. So.
Okay, well, like I said, it's going to be through microphone on speakers because apparently Discord is kind of picky about what audio can be sent through. I am going to link the MP3 in the chat after we hear it, but let me go ahead and get it set up and just hit play. It's going to be about 7 minutes, but I did not put the entirety of the Minstrel Boy on this version because you didn't need to hear that part. But it's just the very beginning portion of the Minstrel Boy is at the very end. This is just to begin the sort of 7-minute countdown before my new live show begins, and I'm still working on the visuals, but this is what we get. I wanted to kind of do this grand sweeping, like all of the stuff that we talk about in the Brood, the story stuff, the theology, kind of all in one place, and some quotes from people. And in the visuals, I used a combination of like movie B-roll, some of the people saying what they're saying and, you know, saying their quotes. And then for older people like G.K. Chesterton and Hans Christian Andersen, I got a picture of them and used MyHeritage's deep nostalgia function to animate their faces slightly. Essentially, they're just moving like they're idling, you know, whatever. Like they're just looking around a little bit, you know, that kind of a thing. If I had no footage of them, but I'm going to have their quotes on the screen. There's going to be a countdown timer, so you can kind of visualize that as we go. All right, I'm going to turn this toward my computer and let me know how it sounds once it starts.
Okay.
All right. Where is it? I had it. Here it is.
Once there were 4 children, whose names were Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy.
Suppose I'm writing a novel. I write, Mary laid down her book. Next moment came a knock at the door. For Mary, who's got to live in the imaginary time of the story, there's no interval between putting down the book and hearing the knock. But I, her creator, between writing the first part of that sentence and the second, may have gone out for an hour's walk and spent the whole hour thinking about Mary.
We make things by the law in which we are made. We create because we are created.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, in the darkness bind them.
Tolkien and Lewis, both in their way, lifted me out of this world to show me a thundering beauty. And when I read the last sentence and came tumbling back to earth, I could still hear the peal. I hear it to this day. God allowed those stories to lift the veil on the imaginary world to show me the real world behind it, which ended up being, in the end, the one I was already in. The real world, at least in part, isn't out there somewhere, nor is it in my mind. It's here, right under my feet, all around me. Tolkien and Lewis held the fabric of Narnia or Middle-earth in one hand and clutched our world in the other, building a bridge across which we could set out for perilous realms, and yet return safely with some of the beauty we found there.
My first and last philosophy, that which I believe in with unbroken certainty, I learnt in the nursery. I generally learnt it from a nurse, that is, from the Solomon Star-appointed priestess at once of democracy and tradition. The things I believed most then, the things I believe most now, are the things called fairy tales.
We live in a moment that's unlike any other moment, a moment of bizarre tyranny, a moment of overreach.
I was nearly torn apart by a crazy doctor.
A moment of fear. It's like, and how are we living? How are we standing up in this moment?
I was made asleep by a bunch of mangy pirates.
Are we full of joy? Like, are we characters who are full of joy and unafraid?
I'm eaten. Got that? Eaten by a fire-breathing dragon. And not to mention being tossed, squashed, and scared practically to death.
It's like, how do we image God in this particular narrative in which we've been placed in this chapter? And we get trained for that by reading about Sam and Frodo and Aragorn and Gandalf, and reading, you know, Charlotte's Web and Animal Farm, and reading about Prince Caspian. Like, when you're little, you read those things and you read stories when you're older, and it reinforces what is the courageous action of a character in this moment.
Yet you stand before me.
Well, yeah.
Think, boy. What kind of an adventure would you have had if I brought you here with a turn of the page?
I wept bitterly, and then I said to myself, when everything happens quite miserably, then he sends help. I have always read so. People must first of all suffer a great deal before they can bring anything to accomplishment.
God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the worlds. For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it in hope, because the creation itself also will be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. Not only that, but we also who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption, the redemption of our body.
Anyway, so that's where Minstrel Boy comes in. Let me get my mic back around. But, yeah. I don't know how well you guys could hear that, but I'm going to link the MP3.
I heard it pretty well.
Yeah? What'd y'all think? I'm sorry?
It was fairly quiet.
Fairly quiet, yeah.
I'm just gonna say, if you ever put like Lewis and Tolkien's voices of them reading in anything, you instantly get a win from me. So thumbs up.
Right?
I am shallow. I am not ashamed to say that I am shallow.
Yep. I also loved the use of Johnny Cash reading Hebrews. Perfect choice.
He read Hebrews and from Hebrews and Romans. Yeah, he read the whole New Testament. So I
know.
His version I had to pick, honestly, because like I wanted an artist's voice coming through, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like he was the best choice in my opinion, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
So let me see here. Yeah, I'm going to link the MP3 for anyone who wants to hear that with better sound. That's in the chat there. But yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what it's going to mean for the live show, you know, have a really nice, engaging, you know, countdown for the show that gets people hyped for what we're going to do. And yeah, so I like long intros too. I'm weird that way. I don't think that they're best for everything, but when I'm listening to a podcast that's confident in their really long intro, it like endears me to them somehow. I don't know. Anyway, it's just I know several podcasts that had long intros that I always got excited to listen to it. So and I know Alex at least has said he loves the Minstrel Boy, the little bits that I've done of it, and actually having the full song in there with that kind of, you know, tailing in as a countdown, I think will be excellent. So
yeah, I completely agree. I love long intros as well. Gets you hyped for the thing that you're about to watch.
Full list of people that I had on here. Two of them were obviously text to speech. Those were G.K. Chesterton and Hans Christian Andersen. Hans Christian Andersen had a Dutch accent, which doesn't sound good even in real life as opposed to text to speech, but you know, he was Dutch, so it's one of those.
If I must be perfectly blunt,
yeah,
which is my usual tone.
Yeah.
I hated that part.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
He sounded like those Indian guys that you talk to when you have a problem with your credit card or something.
That's that Dutch accent, man. I'm gonna see if I can find a better voice for that.
I can do a better Dutch accent than that, if you really want me to read it.
I mean, do you want to be Hans Christian Andersen in this jazz? Because Danny Kaye ain't cutting it for me right now, and he doesn't say what I need him to say as much as I love Danny Kaye.
Yeah, sure, you betcha.
Wait. What are we talking about? Why are we talking about Dutch accents?
Because Hans Christian Andersen was Dutch.
Oh.
The last text-to-speech voice that you heard was a Dutch accent text-to-speech.
Oh. Well, I only say that because my wife grew up in the Netherlands, so...
Oh, okay.
But unfortunately, she's a she. She cannot pretend to be Hans Christian Andersen. So
yeah. If she has
Sorry.
family that wants to do it for me, that'd be great. But anyway, but yeah. So I picked. Okay, so first one was Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. I had an non-whispery ASMR guy doing that voice that I found on YouTube because there's not going to be any copyright violation with that version. And he sounds great. Then I had C.S. Lewis from a BBC address. Unfortunately, I am completely unaware of any video footage of him existing. But so I did the MyHeritage thing on him, the little AI make a move kind of thing. And then I did we had a piece from a conversation between C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, which I've shared in various places before, that was dramatized between two actors. We had another ASMR guy reading The Hobbit, and we had the beginning of The Hobbit, then Tolkien doing the One Ring to rule them all, Andrew Peterson talking about Tolkien and Lewis, and we had G.K. Chesterton quoting from the Ethics of Elfland chapter. We had a crossing back and forth, which really was the linchpin in this whole thing, between Nate Wilson and Macaulay Culkin from The Pagemaster. That was that whole scene that I really loved from The Pagemaster. And then we had Hans Christian Andersen at the very end. So that's what it is so far. And then Johnny Cash doing his thing. So with the scripture. So anyway, that's something I've been working on. So got to share that. Yeah. So
the only thing that I would really critique is that I'm kind of with Ian. I'm not a big fan of the AI voices.
That's fine. I cannot find a British person reading Orthodoxy out loud. I could do a voice, but I cannot find one. I cannot find an audiobook version anywhere that read it and I could pull from it. They're all Americans reading it.
Well, let me.
I can do an accent, but I
can talk to one of my British contacts.
Okay, if they're interested.
I got a guy on. He used to be on Twitter. He's not so much anymore, but we're still pretty tight. He was actually a priest, so.
Okay, all right. If he's interested, that'd be good. If he has that Chestertonian sound, there is actual video footage of Chesterton that exists, but it's so blurry, it's not worth using.
There's audio of him talking.
Yes, there is. And the closer we can get to his voice, the better. Obviously, we don't have any audio of Hans Christian Andersen or video, just pictures. There are photographs of him, though, and that's one of the ones that I colorized and animated for him. But yeah, I'm not fully there on that voice either, and wasn't even before y'all said it. I was just, it's all incomplete. So that's good. He's the big. If I can fix him and maybe Chesterton's voice, that would be a real shot in the arm as far as I'm concerned.
Unfortunately, I don't have any British contacts. I do have some German glasses.
There you go.
Sorry. I heard that and I had to make the joke. Go back to my cave.
That was really good.
I have an Irish goodbye.
There you go. Well, I'm going to do the sign off and then we can hang out and talk whatever. But everyone, be your family's bard. Do not turn to the right or to the left, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. We'll see you next time in the trenches on Poets at War.
This is the Broodcast on Poets at War, Inkling-style Discord chat, last Friday of every month. To join, go to joshuadavidling.com and click the Discord link in the right-hand sidebar.